Hello. Um, Greetings, everyone. Let me know if there's a problem with the connection by speaking or mentioning something in the chat. Yeah. Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the third iteration of Collecting Entanglements and Embodied Histories public programs, a series of monthly events that all four curators build to expand.
Greetings, everyone. Let me know if there's a problem with the connection by speaking or mentioning something in the chat.
I can hear from Katarina, so I just muted Katarina. I'm sorry. Yeah, it's a series of monthly events that all curators build to expand the conversations, discourses, thoughts, lingerings that we encounter in the four different collection-based exhibitions that we are about to do in my IAM Contemporary Art Museum, Singapore Art Museum, Hamburger Bahnhof, and Galeri Nasional Indonesia. I am not going into the details of the project. The previous two public programs have unraveled quite a big part of it, and it is accessible in our website as well as the Goethe-Institut Indonesia's YouTube channel. Before we begin, let me thank Rangi, the tech wizard behind all these online programs, Nina, the communication wizard, and Maya, the all-encompassing magician. Greetings. Sorry to sound so English. When I was preparing this introduction, I thought I would start greeting with time markers as how people usually do it. But then I would sound like a diplomat, acknowledging the different cultures that he or she is addressing. I've always thought of that gesture as rather uncanny, actually. Even though seemingly it is aimed to perform respect, it feels segregating or categorizing, if not condemning. Um, why not acknowledge all the differences that need to be together, at least in that instance? Anyway, I can still try it out, and you can laugh or let me know how I sound. Good evening, Nisa, Enin, Mary, Gia, June, people in Jogja, Jakarta, Singapore, Bangkok, Chiang Mai, Yangon. Good afternoon, Katarina, Stefan. Oh no, Stefan is in Jakarta now. Sorry. Berlin, Sharjah, and that side of the globe. Good morning for Natalie, Ruth, uh, New York, Oregon, DC. How do I sound? I ought to say good reading instead, I guess. Despite the different time zones, we are here to read together after all, to say out loud what we usually dwell in our heads, our minds, or in our hearts after reading. Let me begin with Unsubtitled. The asterisk, even with no clear explanation in our posters, reminds us of terms and conditions apply that are usually present in promotional materials. I added the asterisk to one of Nguyen Chin Thi's work titles, Unsubtitled. Living and working in Hanoi, Chin Thi explores the role of memory in her artistic practice. With her knowledge of journalism, photography, international relations, and visual ethnography, she uncovers hidden histories which reside in social memory, which, according to her, needs to be continually uncovered and deconstructed. The work Unsubtitled was first made and exhibited within the context of Nyasan Studio, an artist initiative and the first experimental artist run space in Hanoi. In 2010, Nyasan Studio was forced to shut down by the local authorities. This was due to the circulation of an image of an artist who performed nude at the gallery. In the same time, in the same year, after laying low for a little while, Nyasan Studio reopened with an exhibition of this video installation piece by Chin Thi. Both the work and the exhibition was called Unsubtitled. The piece is basically a video installation that projects 19 human figures in its life size, arranged in a rather scattered manner within the space. The figures are either members of Nyasan Studio or friends of the members. They are all standing and rather silently eating. I mean, surely it's hard to eat and talk or converse at the same time, right? Eating is one of the most basic acts for the continuation of human life, regardless one's social or political identity. People can choose the food they want to eat and the way they want to eat it. Chinti states very, very simply, eating doesn't require an explanation. I guess hence the title, Unsubtitled. Many would read this work as a way for Chinti to voice her criticism of the surveillance and intimidation of artists in Vietnam. Reading doesn't require an explanation, and it is indeed not explanations of the chosen texts that I hope we will be conversing later. I wanted to extend Chinti's analogy. Much like eating, reading is often done alone. And when it is done in a shared and common physical space, like libraries, for example, it is still somewhat done alone, at least bodily alone, like Chinti's video of people eating, the taking of the food, the chewing, the swallowing, the digestion, and all that follows. But people do eat together all the time. Isn't it feast and festivities that we are missing in these pandemic times? Reading, like eating, is our daily consumption. What does it mean to read together? Wouldn't the rest of the process be done individually anyway? Sure, but wouldn't it be nice to share our optimism, our suspicion, our hopes, our vulnerabilities, and everything that immediately comes after reading? Can reading together be a joyful moment like feasts? In the context of collecting entanglements and embodied histories, the exhibition that I am making departed from intentional groupings, such as states, regions, genres, or what is to be understood as potential roots of solidarity, international solidarity. Since it is a collection-based exhibition, and since it is the collection of Galeri Nasional Indonesia that I am departing from, I intentionally seek for actual individual connections between the artists of whose works I will be exhibiting in Jakarta, despite their nationality or whatever label that they had to wear in order for their work to end up in that collection. I guess this is why I will try to introduce all of you here in the following manner. Just as a disclaimer, the professional bios of each and everyone are available both in our website and also social media channels. Enin Supriyanto is an avid reader. I have read so many books, not only recommended but also given by him. I've also admired how Enin writes. I think first and foremost, he writes for the artists, especially for solo exhibition curatorial essays. It is for the artists to be able to afford a different perspective on why they do what they do the way they are doing it. Since I have the luxury of knowing quite a lot of the artists, I can also confirm you that Enin's texts do have that effect on them. He's also a great conversationalist, hence the moderation role. I have had the luxury to teach with Ruth Noack on different occasions and places. Ruth teaches as she breathes, not only to artists, students, or people around her, but also herself. She's a beautiful and mindful storyteller. She tells her stories in the form of exhibitions, lectures, even symposiums that invite its participants to sleep. She writes as if she's speaking to you and only you. Her essays on artist practice, sometimes in forms of fiction, makes at least me think that it is written for me. Khairunnisa, or Nisa as we call her, is struggling to understand the breadth of what she and her peers do. Is it research? Is it curatorial? Is it management? Is it administrative? How does it function in different settings? I have to say that I don't really know what and how do Nisa read, but I do know that her writings articulate not only her questions, her thoughts, but also her peers. And it is done in a rather effortless manner in which you can read the togetherness that she is coming from, that it is just how things are done. Mary Pansanga is someone I know from so many artists thanks to credit lines. You know, like when you watch a film in the cinema, you would walk out once the lights are back on and the credit title starts running on screen. But as an art practitioner, I'm always interested in these lines. It tells you more about how a work comes into being. its context, its stances, its necessities, sometimes even more than its own statements. So I thought of Mary as the magician behind people's practices. One can only be so if one reads. And by read, I don't necessarily mean books or textual materials, but also situations, conditions, peoples, maps, etc. Lastly, but not least importantly, of course, is Natalie Johnson, my co-host for Unsubtitled. Natalie co-founded Myanmar, a space who does a little bit of everything, from residencies, exhibitions, groups, solo, cultural exchanges, platforms, concerts, screenings, you name it. She also co-founded MARCA, Myanmar Art Resource Center and Archive, which I believe would be better told by her. There were so many occasions in which Natalie and I are boxed or grouped or labeled the same, region-wise, profession-wise, gender-wise. Despite all the settings that have previously allowed us to meet, we have always had a good time talking about the artists, talking about the people around us, those who made us who we are. Our meetings never ended with goodbyes. It always ended with see you later. So I always thought of our conversations as an ongoing thing, hence the idea of engaging with Marca for this session. So thank you for allowing us to pick something from Marca's library for today, Natalie. Over to you.
Oh, thank you so much, Grace, for inviting me here and for that incredibly poetic introduction. I also want to thank all of you for being here and joining the platform to engage with this book that we actually received from Reem Shadid some years ago when she came to Yangon. A big, beautiful, thick 2-volume piece. And we've been taking donations to MARCA for some time in order to help increase the collections and increase the enthusiasm for reading in Myanmar and kind of digging into the past. And we were founded, MARCA was founded in 2012 based on a desire to engage with this past, which in the last 30 years in Myanmar has been quite censored. The acting government or the military tells one type of history and people have their own readings on the other hand. So we wanted to engage with readers to translate these materials as much as we could and to signal this change that happened in Myanmar in and around 2011, 2012. Censorship was abandoned and the military became a civilian government, and many projects and partnerships followed for MARCA, including with Asia Art Archive, with the Goethe-Institut, and so many more. And we were able to create exhibitions along with these books. And COVID, global pandemic, ironically presented an opportunity for us to stay at home and build a website we've always wanted to build, citing and sourcing our materials, even putting our book lists online, translating all of it into Burmese, and sharing the collection, not only the international collection of which Time is Out of Joint was a part, but a Myanmar art history collection. And our launch of the website was meant to be in the first week of February 2021. And now our team has scattered for safety and other reasons. The project is in stasis while scholars, artists, and technical support teams pick up the pieces of their lives. Some family members are in jail. Some of them have absconded to the jungle to join the resistance. Others just don't know how to cope. So this reading group was conceived based on a conversation I had with Grace while explaining what it was like for the artist to go through this recent military coup from February 1st. And I said something like, on February 1st, the future that everyone imagined disappeared. And now we know that when futures disappear, different versions take their place. And where we were founded in a kind of optimistic arc, we are now in a cyclical, repetitive, familiar unfortunately, history and present. And I think everyone here knows the appearance and disappearance of support and engagement is familiar. It's also part of the work that we all do. So I just wanted to thank you all again for being here and for engaging with us and for these readings that you're about to do. I want to introduce Ruth first to read excerpts from The Hanging Garden of Sleep, which is from volume 1 by Haytham Al-Wadani. And I hope you all will stay with us and raise questions and engage with us after all the readers are finished. Over to you, Ruth.
Thank you, Nathalie. So I do want to say a few words about this text. It's actually from a book called Book of Sleep. And this book was published first in the wake of the failure of the Arab Spring. So it was published in Cairo and in Arabic. It's now been translated into English, so you can get it as a whole book. It's a very beautiful translation. And before it was fully translated, Haytham worked with this translator and they translated excerpts of it. And these excerpts were published mostly over in the Arabic world, but in English-speaking magazines. And that's how this filters into the times out of joint. It also filtered to me, and I do want to say that because my attachment to books and to reading is very much also a personal one. It comes very much like when Grace was saying, Enin recommended books, it comes very much through people who say, you need to read this. And in this case, Haytham's texts were introduced to me by two Turkish students of mine, Baha Yarkem Yalim and Ulufa Shelik, who introduced this in a seminar and a research project on sleep. And these texts have stayed with me for 4 years now. Haytham lives in Berlin, so I met him. He's a beautiful person. I've invited him to read these texts at a symposium on sleep as a form of subversion, but I also have, these are kind of like batteries for the exhibitions on sleep that I made. So in all of the exhibitions on sleep I made, 4 exhibitions so far, Haytham's texts were present. And Grace, while I'm reading, I sent you a file because I'm an imbecile. I sent you a file on your email with some images. Possibly, if it's possible for you, you can pull them up and then we can share them afterwards. So the whole text is, the whole book is written, and these are a few excerpts from this book. The whole book is written in these short spurts, these short paragraphs, which are for me very good because they're quite dense. And what Haytham does is he somehow makes poetry and theory together. It's quite, for me, quite beautiful. And it's very melancholic. So I will start reading from it, okay? The people of the cave. Disaster is the point at which the nature of the struggle. Oh, you're doing that. Wait, then I have to find out a way to go out because then I cannot read it. Sorry. I would rather you not show that because my feeling is that we rather put it in the chat, the PDF or so, because my feeling is that it's very difficult to hear when you're also trying to read at the same time. So I'd rather I just read, if that's possible, Grace. Thank you. Disaster is the point at which the nature of the struggle undergoes total change. to become another kind of struggle, which thus requires another kind of resistance. In this sense, disaster is not an extension of struggle, but rather the locus of its radical transformation, a point whose afterwards has no connection with what came before, and so requires no search for solution, nor a widening of the struggle, but wants instead a new beginning to create new tools of resistance. That eagerly awaited new start that is not generated by managing the disaster or ameliorating its impact, but rather by acceptance of permitting the collapse it occasions to run its full course. And this is sleep's function. To take us to the very bottom, without touching which we are unable to rise back up to the surface. Sleep, with all the brokenness and surrender it brings, is not a tool of resistance in the struggle. It is the labor pains that come at the moment of the struggle's transformation. This is really important to him because he's trying to, after the failure of the Arab Spring, a lot of his friends, including him, got super depressed, and how to continue and where to go, and they didn't do much. And he's trying to solve this dichotomy. He says, if you cannot sleep, you cannot awaken. So he's trying to dissolve this dichotomy between activism and passivity, because otherwise there would be no way forward. It is disaster's dark shadow, the twin without which it cannot come into being. When the youths take refuge in their cave from the cruel city, they do not found a just society based on the precepts of the religion for whose sake they were persecuted, nor make their refuge a fortress from which they sally forth against those who did them wrong. They simply sleep. For 309 lunar years, they do nothing but sleep. This actually refers to an old story of the cave, of these people going into the cave and sleeping. I think it's an Arabic story. For 309 lunar years, they do nothing but sleep. The sun dawns and sets 1,000 times. Their recumbent bodies motionless, and then the disaster passes and they wake. The cave where they repaired is not therefore a site of resistance. It is a place of absolute brokenness and the final disjuncture. A place that can only be exited by a fresh bout of labor pains. The sleepers do not wish to resist. They're giving birth to a new beginning. And the new beginning that emerges from the womb of their disaster is the awakening that follows their sleep. Each awakening is an attempt, however weak it may seem, to begin a new day. Our next segment is called Reassured. The social may stop being a space for negotiation and struggle, a space for the exchange of views and dialogue, and another hidden aspect emerge, an arena for shared silence. Sleep on public transport, in the squares and lecture halls, at work, is a redoubled rejection of the social act, for it does not take place in bedrooms, but in the traditional sites of social interaction. The sleeper at work prevents himself working. The sleeper on the bus stops viewing the roadside advertisements. The sleeper in the squares aborts his communication with others. Sleep taps the public sphere with its wand and transforms it from a space for negotiation and struggle into a site of silence and absence, both of which become a collective activity and not a private matter. Yet for all its social inadequacy, sleep does not transform the public sphere into a place of coldness and deliberate disregard, but how strange, into a site of trust and reassurance. For there, at the heart of the social disengagement created by sleep, a new trust in others can be made out. A trust whose origin remains mysterious. For the public sleeper neither negotiates nor struggles with others, doesn't ally or interact, but instead surrenders himself to them, reveals his weakness, his insubstantiality, his incapacity. Sleeping in public is therefore a declaration of faith in the random other. The other of the public squares, besides whom the sleeper contentedly lies, is not one individual, but a group of strangers, a group whose members the sleeper has no desire to know, but is reassured by the plurality, letting himself become like them, a stranger. And the last one I'll read is, oh God, sorry. Go back. A real battle. One evening, my mother stood in the bedroom of my small apartment, telling the sick man that she was unable to look after him right then and promising him that she would do so shortly, while he sat there, chiding her and attempting to emotionally blackmail her, to make her feel guilty. He was wearing a white robe and his breathing was labored. He was nothing like my father, but I was unable to dispel the sensation that this is who he was, the father who had passed away months before an illness. I was distracted, having trouble following what was happening because I wasn't fully apprised. I was preoccupied with arranging my day trip to prison. For reasons I wasn't fully apprised of, for all that they appeared reasonable enough, I was to take the place of a friend of mine in detention. I was speaking to this friend on my mobile, him telling me exactly what it was I had to do and passing on details about the cell and life inside it, and from time to time turning my attention to the conversation between my mother and the sick man, then quickly back again to my affairs. I asked my friend if torture took place and how to get to sleep in the cell, and he told me not to worry and to bring 2 wraps, one to wear as a blanket, the other to tie around my waist. Then I remembered I had to email my work to warn them I'd be absent the day I was inside, and as I wrote it, I noticed that my mother was sticking to her refusal to care for the man in the face of all the arguments he could marshal. I felt no fear as I readied myself to go, just tense, had no intention of putting up a fight. I was going to tamely hand myself over into the clutches of a brutal power of which I knew nothing. My mother, on the other hand, was shedding her skin, putting herself first as she never did. She had entered a real battle, summoning all she had, fighting her own weaknesses and tenderness, and was on the verge of emerging victorious.
I have your image. If you want me to share, you give me a cue, then I will share.
Just give me the first one. Thank you. So I added this last one because I don't want you to think that high time is just metaphoric, and he's just in these small texts. For me, it's really interesting how much can be condensed in such small excerpts and how much can be said without using this academic language of theory. but then there's some, I can very much think alongside this. For me, it's really amazing how much it allows me to think further. And so it was very important for the exhibitions that I did. And I do want to tell you a little bit about these exhibitions, because when you're talking about the potential roots for solidarity, this exhibition I organized was also a kind of an attempt to somehow practice solidarity with each other and with myself. It was at a time when invitations to make exhibitions had really run dry for quite a time now. And there were many artists I had worked with before who said, Ruth, when are you making an exhibition? I want to have an exhibition and with you, and I want to work with you again. And the reason for that is because it is a conversation you have, right? It's an opportunity to develop something together, and that's our lifeblood. And we need these conversations with each other. We need to read together. We need to eat together. And we need to make shows together. And so I was thinking, if artists traditionally, when they don't have money, how do they practice their craft? And they do sketches. So I decided, okay, why not make sketches of exhibitions? And I invited all the artists that I wanted to work with for this to send me something very simple, send me an A4, send me a small sketch of something they would potentially like to do on this topic of sleep as a form of subversion. And we would use the exhibition to bring these together, to start a conversation. And then every time we got another opportunity to make an exhibition, we would try to extend it a little. And then if there was a little money, then we would have one work that we would make from a sketch into a proper work, into a large scale work. And that way, the artist could also use the time. This work, we did this for 2 years. They could use the time to develop something, because a lot of the artists I know also have this problem that they're invited to these very short term, invited to these occasions to work in group shows where they have to very quickly produce something for consumption. And while they do it because they need to continue to connect, and because sometimes there's budget, so they can, that's sometimes the only way they can realize something, is not really an act of thinking or developing the way that most artists prefer to work, which would be long-term, which would be this not goodbye, but we will see each other soon. This kind of mode of working. And so I thought, okay, we can maybe conceive of exhibitions that way. And the first one was in Athens at a place called Yellow Brick. I purposely chose a place that was not so inside in the center of the art world. And it was an exhibition done with work by students of mine and with artists I'd worked with for Documenta or other occasions. And here you see how and always the text of items were part of the exhibition. Always we translated them into the local language and painted them mostly on the walls, and we painted them ourselves. So whenever you see the text, they're painted by me and by the other artists, because we're taking care of Haitam's texts. So we carried the text with us. That the next one was in Prague, and this one is in Beijing. You can go to the next one. And then finally, I got an invitation to do this exhibition a bit larger. So some of the works were actually made larger scale. And in this case, and that was in Stuttgart at Württembergischer Kunstverein, and the last one maybe. And in this case, we painted the texts on fabric and hung them like banners. So I feel very much in this exhibition and this way of congregating artists and to kind of try to create a community of practice of working together, which might be very normal for you folk over there, but within the context I'm usually working in, the Western context, that's not so a practice that is so people are so used to. Our artists were always coming to help install, and it was even in Württembergischer Kunstverein where there were technicians who could have helped paint these. I insisted that we're painting these ourselves as an act to connect with item and with this text. So the one last thing I want to say is that Haitam's texts really also helped me with figuring this out. We're coming here. We've all been through a very dark time, and dark time continues in many countries. Here in the United States, it's celebrated this coming out of the dark times as if the problems that had been exacerbated, become more obvious in these dark times in the United States were gone, but they're not. Racial inequity and class inequity continue to be here. Nevertheless, there's this celebration, this optimism. Of course, we got rid of a very evil man at the helm of this nation, so that is something to be celebrated. But what I really what gives me, nurtures me from Haitam text is this thinking of dark times and thinking of awakening or better times. Maybe not, as Natalie said, in a circular way, but thinking of it as something that is somehow connected. And we have to kind of get the energy, we have to get from one to the other. And maybe not like, we have to think of them together, and we have to develop practices that carry through these and don't just stop with these periodizations that are put upon us by media or by so to kind of repair time that is out of joint. I think it's really important to figure out how to act together in every moment to make every moment present, and so as not to get into this moment of, as Peter Steil calls it, the November that comes after the October Revolution, or the spring that comes after the winter. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruth.
Should I go after Ruth? Yeah. Okay. Maybe I share the screen of the books for some people. Yeah. We did before. Okay. So first of all, I would like to thank Grace and the whole team who have organized this event and have invited me to join. And I have looked through the text that Grace has kindly selected for us, and there are so many of them. But then I decided to pick on the work of Kwame Appiah. Apologize if I pronounce his name wrong. So Kwame. So his text is called Global Citizenship. And I will read only like the first chapter of it, as the whole text will be too long. And even the first chapter, it will take some time. So I'm sorry in advance, and if you don't mind, please bear with me. Global citizenship. So far as we know, the first person to claim that he was a citizen of the world, cosmopolis in Greek, which of course is where our word cosmopolitan comes from, was a man called Diogenes. Diogenes was the most colorful of the founders of the philosophical movement called Cynicism, and he was born sometime late in the 5th century BCE in Sinope, on the southern coast of the Black Sea, in what is now Turkey. The Cynics rejected tradition and local royalty and generally opposed what everybody else saw as a civilized behavior. Diogenes himself lived, tradition reports, in a large clay pot. It is said that he did what my English nanny would have called his business in public. And if you do not know what my English nanny would have called your business, my nanny would not have wanted me to tell you. He also did what Hugh Hefner has made his business in public too. He was, in short, a sort of 4th century BCE performance artist. In fact, Diogenes' name in some quarters was Diogenes the dog. And since kunos in Greek means dog, this is where the Cynics got their name. The Cynics are just the doggy philosophers. It is no wonder that they kicked him out of Sinope. Still, for better or worse, Diogenes is also the first person who is reported to have said that he was a citizen of the world. Now, this is a metaphor. Of course, because citizens share a state, and there was no world state, no cosmopolis, so to speak, for Diogenes to be a citizen. So like anyone who adopts a metaphor, he had to decide what to mean by it. One thing that Diogenes did not mean was that he was in favor of a single world government. He once met someone who did, Alexander of Macedon, who favored government of the world by Alexander of Macedon. The story goes that Alexander came across Diogenes one sunny day. This time, for some reason, without his usual terracotta pot, he was actually in a hole in the ground at that time. The Macedonian world conqueror, who as Aristotle's student has been brought up to respect philosophers, asked Diogenes if there was anything he could do for him. Sure, Diogenes said, it was a sunny day. You can get out of my light. So Diogenes was clearly not a fan of Alexander's, or we may suppose of his project of global domination. This must have upset Alexander, by the way, because one of his famous reported remarks is, if I had not been Alexander, I should have liked to have been Diogenes. Diogenes did not believe in philosopher kings for Athens. Why should he want them for the planet? That is the first thing I would like to take from Diogenes in interpreting the metaphor of global citizenship. No world government, not even by a student of Aristotle's. We can think of ourselves, Diogenes wanted to say, as fellow citizens, even if we are not, and do not want to be a member of a single sovereign political community, subject to a single sovereign world government. A second idea we can take from Diogenes is that we should care about the fate of all our fellow human beings, not just the one in our own police, but our own political community. Just as within your community, you should care about everyone in your fellow citizens. So in this world as a whole, you should care for your fellow world citizens. And furthermore, this is the third idea from Diogenes. We can borrow good ideas from all over the world, not just from our own society. It is worth listening to others because they may have something to teach us. It is worth their listening to us because they may have something to learn. We do not have any writings from Diogenes, partly I suspect, because like Socrates, he believed that conversation which go both ways and in which you can learn as well as teach was a better mode of communication than writing messages to people who cannot answer back, which is what books are. So that is the final thing I want to borrow from him, the value of dialogue, conversation, as a fundamental mode of human communication with its double-sidedness. These three ideas, then, are a 21st century American citizen of Anglo-Ghanaian ancestry, want to borrow from a citizen of Sinope, who dreamed of global citizenship 24 centuries ago. First, we do not need a single world government, but we must care for the fate of all human beings inside and outside our own societies. And we have much to gain from conversation with one another across our differences. Diogenes Cosmopolitanism entered Western intellectual history through the Stoic Zeno of Citium, a town of Cyprus, who is conventionally regarded as the first Stoic, seems to have been influenced by the Cynics. Cosmopolitanism, as Diogenes understood it, with its openness to foreigners without embracing world government, is found in the greatest of the Stoic, Cicero, in the Roman Republic of the 3rd centuries BCE, for example. And Marcus Aurelius, the 2nd century CE Roman emperor. If anyone should have believed in world government, it was these Roman rulers of the world. But Aurelius talks about cosmopolitanism to insist on the spiritual affinity of all human beings, not to argue for the global empire. Through people such as Cicero, Epictetus, or Aurelius, a Stoicism entered the intellectual life of Christianity, despite the fact that, as everyone who saw the movies Gladiator knows, Aurelius spent a great deal of energy executing Christians because they were a threat to a Roman Republic, as he convinced it. You can hear the Stoic echo in the language of the Greek-speaking Soul of Tarsus, another town in Asia Minor, in what is now southern Turkey. So was a Hellenist Jew and a Roman citizen, known to history, of course, as surely nobody in this institution needs reminding, as St. Paul, the first great institutional architect of the Christian church. In his epistle to the Galatians, he wrote famously, "There is neither Jew nor Greek, there is neither bond nor free, there is neither male nor female, for you are all one in Christ Jesus." Much of St. Paul's evangelism took place in Asia Minor, where he was born. One of my favorite facts is that Sinope, Diogenes' hometown, was in Galatia. So when he wrote those very cosmopolitan words, St. Paul was writing to Diogenes' people, to the very people who gave us the world's first cosmopolitan, the first known one anyway. When the idea of cosmopolitanism was taken up again in the European Enlightenment, it had the same core, global concern for humanity, without a wish for world government. Modern cosmopolitanism, in fact, grew with modern nationalism, not as an alternative to it, but as a complement to it. And at its heart was not just the idea of universalities, concern for all humanity as fellow citizens, but also the value of different human ways of going on. That is why it does not go with world government, because different communities are entitled to live according to different standards, because human beings can flourish in many different forms of society, and no single society can explore all the human form of flourishing. You find cosmopolitanism in Johann Gottfried von Herder, the great philosopher of German Romanticism and German nationalism. Herder believed that the German-speaking peoples were entitled to live together in a single political community. But he also saw that what was good for the Germans was good for everyone else. So, unlike many Germans of his day, he believed in the political self-determination of all the peoples of Europe, even the slaves in this of the world. You find cosmopolitanism too in Immanuel Kant's Plan for Perpetual Peace, which was the origin, of course, for the idea of the League of Nations, or the forerunner for the United Nations. Cosmopolitanism then it's universalistic. It's believed that every human being matters and that we have shared obligations to care for one another. But what distinguishes it from other forms of universalist philosophy is that it also accepts a wide range of legitimate human diversities. That respect for diversities comes from something that also goes back to Diogenes, tolerant for other people's choices of how to live, and humility about what we ourselves know. Conversation across identity, religions, races, ethnicities, and nationalities is worthwhile because through conversation, you can learn from people with different, even incompatible ideas from your own. And it is worthwhile too, because if you accept that you live in a world with many different kinds of people, and you are going to try to live in respectful peace with them, then you need to understand each other whether or not you agree. Globalization has made this ancient idea relevant, which it was not really in Diogenes or Aurelius' day, because there are two obvious conditions for making citizenship real. Knowledge about the life of other citizens on the one hand, and the power to affect them on the other. Diogenes did not know about most people in China, in Japan, in South America, in Equatorial Africa, even in Western or Northern Europe. And nothing he did was likely to have much impact on all those other people, at least so far as he knew either. So the fact is you cannot give a real meaning to the idea that we are fellow citizens if you cannot affect each other and you do not know about each other. In this respect, we no longer live in the Diogenes world. In the last few centuries, as every human community has gradually been drawn into a single web of trade and a global network of information, we have come to the point where each of us can realistically imagine contacting any other of our 6 billion or fellow humans and sending that person something worth having, a cell phone, an anti-retroviral, or a good idea. Unfortunately, we now also send through negligence as easily as molesting that will cause harm, a virus, an airborne pollutant, a bad idea. The possibilities of good and ill are multiplied beyond all measure when it comes to politics carried out by government in our name. Together, we can ruin poor farmers by dumping our subsidized grain into their markets, cripple industry by punitive tariff, and deliver weapons that will kill thousand upon thousand. Together, though, we can also raise standard of living by adopting new policy on trade and aid prevent or treat disease with vaccines and pharmaceuticals. Take measure against global climate change, encourage resistance to tyranny, and encourage a concern for the worth of every human life. And of course, the World Wide Web of information, radio, television, telephones, the internet, perhaps the US Postal Service, means not only that we can affect life everywhere, but that we can learn about life everywhere too. Each person you know about and can affect is someone to whom you have responsibilities, even if they are largely negative ones. To say that is to affirm the very idea of morality. The challenge then is to take the minds and hearts from over the long millennia of living in local troops and equip them with ideas and institutions that will allow us to live together as the global tribe we have now become. The existence of global media means we can now know about one another, and global interconnections, economic, political, military, and ecological, mean that we inevitably will affect one another. So now we really need a cosmopolitan spirit. That spirit thinks of us all as bound together across the species, but also accept that we will make different choices within and across nations about how to make our life. Notice that the cosmopolitan value diversities of this sort because of what it makes possible for people. at the heart of cosmopolitanism in respect for diversities of culture, not because cultures matter in themselves, but because people matter and culture matters to people. Where culture is bad for people, for individual men or women and children, the cosmopolitan is not going to be tolerant of it. We do not need to treat genocides or human rights abuse as just part of the diversities of the species. A local taste that some totalitarian just happen to have. Cosmopolitanism, as I have been developing, it is a double-strand tradition. Its slogan might as well be universality plus difference. I have already hinted here at why cosmopolitans indeed celebrate the wide range of human diversities, but I want to be more explicit about some of the reasons. Why, after all, should we not do in the name of our universal concern what missionaries of many faiths have always done? Why should we not go out into the world guided by truths and helps others to live by it too? The first reason is that cosmopolitans inherit from our Greek forebears a recognition of the shortcomings of our human capacity to grasp the truth. Cosmopolitanism began with the philosophical doctrine of fallibilism, the recognition that we may be mistaken even when we have looked carefully at the evidence and apply our highest mental capacities. A fallibilist knows that he or she is likely to make mistakes. We have views, we take our own views seriously, but we are always open to the possibility that it may turn out that we are wrong. If I am wrong about something, maybe I can learn from others, even though they are no doubt wrong about something else. But there is an important second reason why we think people should be allowed, where feasible, to go their own ways, a reason whose roots are in more modern ideas, in particular, the idea that each human individual is charged with ultimate responsibility for his or her own life. Our pursuit of a good life is constrained by morality, but also by historical circumstances and physical and mental endowments. I was born in the wrong place to be an American president. I am inclined to say, thank God. And with the wrong body for motherhood, I lack the patience to do good laboratory science. But each of us has a great variety of decisions to make in shaping our life. Everybody should have a great variety of decisions to make in shaping their own life. A philosophical liberal, such as myself, believe these choices belong in the end to the person whose life it is. So I would like to end the text here. And there is some, the reason that I chose this text is because, like, first of all, it gave me an enjoyable reading experience. It's like someone telling you the story, taking you to different places, introducing you to different people. Here in the text, Kawame traces the appearance of the word cosmopolitanism in the work of previous philosophers and thinkers. But it won't be all, though, because I have read only the first section. Reading this text reminded me of when I walked through an art exhibition this day. And this leads me to my afterthoughts about the text. When Kawame mentioned today's global citizenship, for him, a real citizen is one who has knowledge about the life of other citizens, and on the one hand, and the power to affect them on the other. This made me think of the artists and their practice. If we think of global citizenship as providing the existence of global media and global conversation, which affect each other, then what about an artwork or artistic practice and how it affects us? Kawame then mentioned that maybe now it's the time that we need the cosmopolitan spirit. For him, cosmopolitan spirit is the spirit. Think of us all as bound together across the species, but also accept that we will make different choices within and across nations about how to make our lives. Kawame interpreted the developed concept of cosmopolitanism as he say, cosmopolitanism as I have been developing, it is so a double strand tradition. Its slogan might as well be universality plus difference. I have already hinted here at why cosmopolitan accept, indeed celebrate the wide range of human diversities, but I want to be more explicit about some of the reasons why, after all, should we not do in the name of our universal concern what missionary of many faiths have always done? Why should we not go out into the world, guided by truth, and help others to live by it too? For me, an artwork or art practices is a special unit that provides a gap of interpretation where truths and fault could possibly align next to each other. It is something that connects us together, and at the same time, it separates us and gives each of us our own space. And here, Kawame also gave the answer to this question. He mentioned that cosmopolitanism begins with the philosophical doctrine of fallibilism, the recognition that we may be mistaken even when we have looked carefully and the evidence apply our highest mental capacities. He mentioned further that the fallibilists know that he or she is likely to make mistake. We have views, we take on our views seriously, but we are always open to the possibility that it may turn out that we are wrong. If I am wrong about something, maybe I can learn from others, even though they are no doubt wrong about something else. Following what Kawame said here, I then try to think of an artist that takes on Kawame's conception of the cosmopolitan spirit. Then I think of Prashya Pintong, a dearly respected artist. Prashya is a conceptual artist whose identity is fluid. You always wonder where he comes from. And through his artwork, it raises the question of why he is interested and steer himself to be part of these subjects, ranging from sleeping sickness disease in Zambia, labor exploitation in Lapland, through methane hydrates, an alternative fuel for future energy obtained in Lake Baikal. But here, I am particularly interested in one of his smaller pieces, but for me, I think it has a meaningful idea behind it. The work called Spoon was initially created as a product for sale at the museum shop for the exhibition Soft Power at the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art, where he was invited. Spoon is a collaborative sculpture between the artist and the villager of Ban Napia in the province of Chiang Khong, Laos, one of the most heavily bombed areas in the world during the Secret War. American bombers dropped over 2 million tons of cluster bombs over Laos, and an estimate 30% of them, or 80 million bombs, failed to explode upon impact. These deadly bomb items remain a persistent threat up until today. Hearing that local village melted down the metal from these mental bombs, he recasted them into utensils for their daily use and making souvenirs to sell to tourists. Prashya then collaborated with the family there to create this round palm-sized shape and later polish it to a mirror-like plate. He paired this with postcard purchased from MAG, Unexploded Ordnance Visitor Centers, which portrays a farmer holding the first harvest of cotton grown on land, newly cleared of bombs. For me, the work Spoon is what you hold in your hand, reflecting you and others and what's around you. I was intrigued by the way in which he shifted the material and opened possibilities in the subtle way for all of us, and of course for himself, to acknowledge and have dialogue through his work to different times and places. I would like to end here with Kawame's interpretation of the metaphor of global citizenship that he took from Diogenes, which I found these points of his resonated well with Prashya's collaborative works and his practice. We are not and do not want to be a member of a single sovereign political community. We should care about the fates of all our fellow human beings, not just the one in our own polis. We can borrow good ideas from all over the world, not just from our own society. It is worth listening to others because they may have something to teach us. It is worth their listening to us because they may have something to learn. And the last thing, the value of dialogue, conversation, and the fundamental mode of human communication with its double-sidedness. So here is the end of my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mary. We go directly with Nisa before Mas Enin takes over.
Yes, I'm going to share my screen now. Yeah. Is it good? Okay. Okay. First of all, thank you very much for the invitation, Grace. Actually, at the first time when I got the invitation, I don't really know why, but then now I know why. I'm thinking like which writing that I should read, because I'm not really good with multitasking, but now currently I'm reading another text or another books. And then Grace suggests me this specific, not specific, like she suggests two writings that might resonate my personal experience. And then that's why I'm choosing that title specifically from Time is Out of Joint, Volume 2, Interview with Ismail Shamud by Mustafa Nisaburi, translated by Maya Sidhu. This text was published in French in Integral Magazine, Casablanca, issue 9, December 1974, page 32 until 35. So for me now, I think before everyone read like the whole text, and for me, I will try to share you my take or my response to the writing, and that's why I'm going to show you this bright color presentation. I'm sorry for your eyes. It's pink and white. Yellow, sorry. Okay, I will share you quotes that, for me, at least, it's interesting to discuss, because afterwards I will take you to another point of view. So the first one, so this text begin with the question. The question is, the Union of Arab Artists, of which you are the president, had to its credit a certain number of events, which foregrounded questions relative to artistic creation in cultural affairs, whether in the Middle East or North Africa. Could you speak to us about the goals of this union, about its role, its objectives, and problems that, in your eyes, Arab painters are experiencing? So some of the text I highlighted into yellow. It's because I feel like it's interesting for me. That's why I'm highlighted. It feels like I'm reading a text, then I will highlight it, which part I think it's good for me. And then the next quotes, sorry. Okay. Next quotes is, the union definitely has objectives and obligations. We cannot reach the goals proposed for ourselves unless our obligations are the same, are accomplished in close conjunction with one another. The Union of Arab Artists has the ultimate goal of constituting an avant-garde in our Arab nation. In view of our rights in all respective countries, the Arab masses and its intellectual avant-garde, the role it could play is dictated by our most important shared duties within the context of edifying an entire civilization. The objectives that are determined in our association, whatever their importance, are subjected to a strategy by us alone, meaning between Arab artists, following the creation of the union. Thus, the fact that we know each other are mutually discovering one another through creating a dialogue between us is in itself one of the most important problems. In this context, we can say that our duty consists essentially to break with our individual and collective isolation, creating a possibility for dialogue faster than what it has been until now between intellectuals and artists in a circle that is growing. It makes sense to first know who we are in the global context of the arts in order to better define our concept of engagement. That fact of discovering our heritage had an extraordinary impact on our conduct, forcing us, so to speak, to realize what we are as visual artists, mostly indicating us to focus on our heritage to give us new aspirations, to give something new. Other subjects of our investigations, like the role of art in the cause, were sensitive subjects, which asked to be clarified in discussions. The truth is that we can decide randomly if art should be engaged or not. We must first deepen the question, become really immersed and convinced of this decision, and make understood the role that must be played. That the role of the artist is heard, that's to say, in their stance. So that engagement is the emanation of a genuine awareness that has effects on our behavior. I highlighted that first sentence. We can do this alone. I want to scream, but it's not appropriate, so I will continue. This responsibility that of making art within reach for all doesn't only fall to artists, but is also shared by the state. From this point of view, we plan on taking decisive action, but we need help, giving us assistance that concretizes the relationship between artists and the Arab masses, so that the problems we are experiencing are really understood by them, and vice versa. It's a task that the artist alone cannot take on. There have to be groups working to promote this understanding, which manifests in a consciousness raising of the masses. We have recorded the important results, even though we have had some disappointments. For example, we invited Arab and foreign critics in addition to the executive committee of the International Association of Painters. We have talked with these people and heard their points of view. We wanted them to be extremely candid with us, to give our event a real review, but they disappointed us. It doesn't matter. We must, above all, count on ourselves. So that's the end of the quotes that I chose. Then I will take you into more personal reflection of mine. Somehow it feels too personal because maybe I need to explain some words. So here we are. I will take you in within these three keywords: art workers, union, and K-pop fandom. So why? I will get it there later. So here, I'm speaking not try to give like not to differentiate by the age of or generation, but somehow meme, it's easy to take, or it's a coping mechanism for me, at least when I'm tired of my working condition, or when I talk to my friends, like circle of friends, somehow we always share memes, different memes about related to the art working in the art world. And I display few memes. The first one on, I don't know which, left or right. The first one, it's on the left side, it's the meme from Indo Art No in Instagram. It's snippets from the screenshot from the Kiki delivery service, where she counted the salary or the income she got that day. So on the left, it's the income for me, it's a lot, but the fee for her artisan is very less. So somehow it happens somehow. And also on the right side, I got it from Twitter, from the Medan Seni Rupa Twitter account. There's signs of working in the art world, like headaches, feeling negative, or overly critical, unexplained exhaustion, irritable, becoming physically ill, insomnia, changes in sleep patterns, endless anxiety, feeling inadequate and or hopeless, neglect, self-care, feeling numb or apathetic about life. It's somehow signs of working, maybe generally, but not to make it general. Everyone experiences matter. So, but this is specifically like me and my friends somehow like laugh about it, but also we try to think that, can we do something about this, like from our experience? And then I will take you into the next one, another meme, artists support artists. Is it possible or not? Like, can we? It's a question, but already some friends really supported each other. Like my friends, I'm privileged enough to have very supportive circle of friends that can laugh about our stories and also support it, but also to think critically about our condition. That's why I'm going to take you this into very personal. I don't think that many, maybe some of the viewer or the participant in here know about this, but I am in a fandom. Fandom, it's a fan kingdom, or it's commonly used, the word, in K-pop fans. So I'm in this fandom of Mamamoo, so I'm supporting Mamamoo as an artist. They are a group of a girl or a women, I don't know, a girl group, 4 members, and they've been working actively since 2014. I've been their fan since 2015, probably, roughly say. And from the experience being in a fandom, I learned a lot, not only admiring a person, but also about working condition. So this was one example in 2018. On your left was their schedule for 2018 alone. So they launched this very ambitious project of promoting 4 albums in a year, and also different concerts in and outside Korea, and also local appearance in television, entertainment shows, whatever you mentioned, they appear in every shows during 2018. It's almost like maybe almost 100 activities in 2018. And as fans, I'm going to call it as we realized that they've been overworked, mentally exhausted, because one member got anxiety attack and panic disorder, and she need to rest, but she only got to rest for 1 day. And some of the members also physically injured. And that's the thing that triggered us as fans to feel like there's something wrong with this. There's something wrong with the working condition as an artist or as a singer. That's why in 2018, the agency or the company tried to create, to have a concert, like end-year concert. But then as fans, we feel that they've been overworked. This is a very bad working condition for them. And we boycotting them by not buying the tickets, not buying the souvenirs, not stream their songs online so they can get any revenue from the stream sites. So we canceled all the income that the company might get. So as a fans, we unite. We create this labor union, so-called, and we boycotting the company, but not the artist. We boycotting them to create a better working condition for Mamamoo, the artist that I'm supported. We boycotting them, like we're fans. We're far from them. I've never met them. I've never in contact, or even I don't even know they know me. I don't even know if they know I exist as a person or as a fan. But it's a very sincere feelings or solidarity between fans to their artists. So from art workers to K-pop fandom, that's the trip I will take you. And then I already chose few quotes from the time is out of joint, but then I mentioned before that I'm currently reading a book, and I'm not really good with multitasking, so that's why the text that I chose, the writing from Ismail, I think it's very connected with what I'm reading currently. It's Joyful Militancy, Building Resistance in Toxic Times by Montgomery and Carla Bergman, AK Press, Institute for Anarchist Study, 2017. I will share you few quotes that I think can be a material for us or for me to reflect on. When someone receives comfort and support from friends, they find themselves willing to confront the abuse they have been facing. When people find themselves genuinely supported and cared for, they are able to extend this to others in ways that seem impossible or terrifying before. Friendship and resistance are interconnected. When we are supported, we are more willing to confront that which threatens to destroy our worlds. Friendship and affinity are not things, but process and open questions which produce partial responses, further questions, flashes of certainty and confidence, but never definitive answers. And to end my reading of quotes and sharing you my personal experience with fandom and K-pop, not to make you dwell to that, I'm going to end my readings with a few questions that, are we able to break with our individual and collective isolation? And from my experience as a fans, can we support each other based on affinity? Like in the meme, you can see, support your friend just like you support a celebrity that doesn't know you exist. So to end my readings, for my fellow art workers, whether you social admin, working behind the scene, curators, writers, critics, art handlers, cleaning service, everyone, as we don't have any fans or fandom like myself, can we generally support each other in these times of uncertainty? Thank you so much. I think I will end that.
Thank you so much, Nisa. Quick answer, we are able.
So how do we proceed, Grace?
Mas Enin, proceed. Hi, Mas Moderator.
Really?
Yes.
I have to moderate this session. I don't think I'm able to do that, but let's try. First of all, thank you for all our readers. It has been a really interesting journey, you know, to be able to, well, in my case, actually rereading again some of these texts because I somehow involved in the process of publishing these 2 volumes of books with Tarek a couple of years ago, supported by Sarja Art Foundation. But I will try to get into some of the texts again and probably sort of like here and there expand our dialogue conversation based on the reading materials. But of course, we already heard before how some of the readers actually expand the text already by juxtaposing this text with different things. In the case of Ruth, it's in relation to the exhibitions project that Ruth has been doing. And then with Mary, it's related to another artwork with artwork by an artist. And then with Nisa, the text somehow relate to our very current sort of like situations regarding social media and this kind of networks and relationship that can be built based on this new kind of let's say production consumption relations that happen because of the way the industry in the case of K-pop evolve or develop until today. So first, I would like to address some issues regarding the text that Ruth already read. We know that the text later on comprised into a book. Yeah? So, even though the style of writings by Haitham is really dense, but at the same time it's so well versed, erudite kind of writing, which I really enjoy. But still, the text that we are facing now is an excerpt. So probably Ruth, who know Haitham, the writer, personally, and then also most likely already read the book of Sleep in its entirety. What do you think about this kind of situation that we are facing, an excerpt as as a frame, you know, that somehow like a photographic frame, we know what's in the frame, but at the same time, what intrigue us or probably questions that we have to address is what are excluded from the frame, you know. So I wonder whether your exhibitions actually trying to fill in this exclusion, while at the same time it's still dealing with the main narrative or the main ideas about sleep, you know. So this is my first take on the text, and then with Mary's Choice, you know, this very interesting text by Kwame Appiah on cosmopolitanism. I wonder whether Mary also aware, you know, with the fact that these, especially for us in Southeast Asia, yeah, with the birth of nation state after the Second World War, you know, that most of the country in Southeast Asia and Africa gained independence. This idea of cosmopolitanism is actually very much or closely related with the emergence of nation state in the region, in Asia and Africa, which is why then we witness how this idea of cosmopolitanism embodied, actually, for instance, in the case of Asia African nations, with the big meetings in Bandung in 1955, with the Asia African Conference organized by all these new nation states in Bandung. And then from this point on, we witness all kind of different sort of like union develop in many parts of the world. But at the same time, now, if we connect those that dot, especially with all these ideas or all this attempt to embrace the idea of cosmopolitanism. Even also, I'm not sure about other countries in Southeast Asia, but for I'm now using only reference from Indonesia. As early as the 1950s, so that means 5 years after Indonesia gained independence, a group of young artists published their so-called manifesto in bahasa Indonesia. In Indonesian language, it's called Surat Kepercayaan Gelanggang, or the belief letters of Gelanggang. Gelanggang is the name of the group, or let's say artist collective, consists of writers, painters, intellectuals. And the first line of their manifesto is actually very interesting. It said, this is loosely translated into English, we are the citizens, we are the true inheritance of the culture of the world, and we will continue to develop this culture of the world in our own ways. So there was this strong belief in this idea of cosmopolitanism as early as, let's say, even less than a decade, when these countries just gained their independence, you know. So at the beginning of the birth of these new nation states, I wonder whether you also sort of like know some of this kind of development that happened probably in your country, you know, like early evidence of some of the artists or intellectual who sort of like already embrace these ideas of cosmopolitanism. And for Nisa, of course, it is interesting that you transform us from the idea of Ismail Samud, who wants to form this new union of artists to support each other, at the same time to constitute their relevance in the new kind of Arab society. But and then you juxtapose this whole idea with the fact that nowadays this form of union or this form of solidarity can take a different kind of roots, different kind of strategy altogether. So whether you are instead of asking questions, you are probably already have some kind of suggestions, you know, that we can probably discuss your suggestion of how this potential of union, that what kind of new kind of union that we can probably look after or look for now. Thank you. And of course, with this, I would like to invite everyone to probably just comment or raise hands using your raise hand buttons, so that we can enrich our conversations in much sort of like in much more diverse kind of directions. Thank you.
Oh, before we go to Ruth, also for friends who are joining from YouTube or Facebook, please type in your comments, questions, and our colleagues from Goethe-Institut will be magically making it appear to us. Thank you.
Yes, I mean, you latch onto this fact that we have these excerpts from Haitam's longer text, right? I think his way of reducing certain things into these small kernels that can be copy-pasted in different ways, you know, they can be taken from the book and put here. There is an attempt to circumvent that a little bit. It's a kind of almost like a Walter Benjamin crystal, which like speaks a moment of truth that's not claiming to speak all. And because it's not claiming to speak all, it actually allows for all to exist next to it. Because as long as you don't claim to speak all, you are making space for the other. What is not said, right? It's only when you're claiming to say all that you're excluding the other. I was thinking very much about something I learned, I don't know what, 40 years ago, when I was reading about map making, and someone was explaining that there are these empty parts of maps of where the Western the Western explorers said we don't know about this place, only appeared at a time when almost everything was colonized already. So the understanding and the perception of what we don't know comes with knowledge, right? When we don't have the knowledge, then we think we know all. Only when we have the knowledge do we understand how little we know. Yeah. So I think that's something that's goes beyond Haitam. In terms of, no, I did not try Haitam was certainly very important to this exhibition and kind of a source of energy, but it was not the beginning of the exhibition. The beginning of the exhibition came much, much earlier, after I'd finished Documenta and 5 years of really intense labor, 24/7. And I was myself very exhausted, and I started getting very fascinated with these moments of where people refuse to function, where people refuse to do what they're supposed to be doing. And then that I noticed that this has for many, many years, hundreds of years, been somehow associated with sleep often. So workers, up to this day, there are a lot of sleep strikes, workers sleeping in factories, workers refusing to work and instead sleeping. And so this idea that sleep is actually a very active thing to do, which is to say I won't do something else, seemed really important, especially because sleep seemed to be less and less something that we were able to do. You have a sleep industry, but at the same time, where we're supposed to be, where even that moment of escape is made into something that's somehow like a product, you know, where we pay some money and then we buy good sleep through a mattress or through meditation or through other things. So even sleep now is capitalistically imbued. And I was super interested in these moments of rebellion, especially of artists. And a very famous one is God, what's it? Now I'm forgetting his name. Croatian artist, very, very, very. God, he died 2 years ago, and he's a hero of mine. I've shown his work, and now I can't think of his name, but I will. And he made this in the 70s. This work where he's actually, you can see him sleeping on a sofa and turning a little bit, and it says "Artist at Work." And so I was also saying, if you don't sleep, you cannot dream. So maybe one of the reasons why we cannot develop current utopia, why there are so few utopias, is because we're not dreaming, because we're not sleeping. So that was the theme of the exhibition.
Mm-hmm. But at least from the text and the excerpt that we have in the book, it is interesting to notice actually that Haitham, while exploring this whole idea about sleep, is actually somehow never mentioned things about dreams.
Dreams? No.
Yeah. Do you have your own take about this? Well,
yes.
Sleeping seems to be his way of explaining almost like a total detachment from social reality, you know,
yes,
in a way. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But somehow he never mentions another form of detachment from reality, which in a way relate closely to sleep, which is dreams.
Yes, he's very anti-dream. We've had this, I mean, not that he is against dreams, but yes, for him, the dichotomy he tries to deal with is activity and inactivity as a dichotomy. He tries to get rid of that dichotomy. But he's firmly into this idea of sleep and awakening, where awakening is a state that's not just being awake like a zombie functioning, but actually a political awakening. And dreams don't figure into it because he's also not interested in psychoanalysis in this way. He's firmly, referring to Benjamin, to Hannah Arendt, to philosophers like that, and to the Arabic philosophers. But for me, dreaming is reality. Dreaming is one of the most important aspects of reality for me. And there's, in fact, I was working and I continue to work with someone who's looking at dreams in relation to social reality and politics, called Sharon Slivinsky. And we're making an exhibition about dreams of transformation, because if you don't look at psychoanalysis, but you really take the dream as a kind of, look at its dream furniture, let's say it like that, its dream landscape, there's a lot that is spoken about, is said in dreams, that is very, very important to our presence. And there was I don't want to take up too much time, but this is so interesting. You can look at this at the website called the Museum of Dreams. It's a really nice website. There was a journalist in the 1930s called Charlotte Behrendt who collected dreams at the beginning of the Nazi regime. And all of the totalitarian forms of alienation, of kind of alienating the self, so that the self is super afraid even when there is no surveillance. All the violence is already prefigured in the early dreams of people. So she's making a genealogy of totalitarianism based on these dreams. It was terribly criticized at the time because of the psychoanalysts who said you cannot use dreams like that. But she was a journalist. She smuggled these dreams out of Nazi Germany, and she herself escaped and then published them in English and German. And they're amazing. It's called the Reich of Dreams, I think. And you can find excerpts of that on that website.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're interested in that, that's super, super. I find that something I want to continue to work with. So.
Thank you, Ruth.
Thank you, Enin.
Mari?
Hi. Okay. So thank you for the questions. Maybe this one PGF can join, definitely, for the ideas. She definitely have the comments. But when you think about the cosmopolitans in terms of like, when I think of cosmopolitans, if I think of Thailand, and when I think of the word cosmopolitans, I found it's on the contrary. For me, I think like we themselves, the country, of course, we are like a cosmopolitan country. Of course, Thailand is not just Thai people. We are like having a lot of people from different regions, you know, like from Laos, from like the South, you know, from Malay. So we have all, definitely it's a cosmopolitan countries and a cosmopolitan place. But for me, I always think that a Thai people or the country itself is more about trying to unite or trying to be eccentric. So they mostly the event that happened, it's all about we are Thai, you know. Yeah, it's more about like we have to be Thai. Even though you are Chinese, it's better if you are Thai. Or if you are like from the South, you are from the Malay, it's better if you are Thai. So it's more about that kind of events that is kind of resonates and this happen every time, even up until today. I think it still happen in the countries, and I think we and even though like some of even though some people that they're actually not Thai, for example, they are like origin from China, they are Chinese, but they are happy that they are Thai. You know, it's kind of this kind of ideas that it's better if you are Thai, you stay in the countries. You know, you feel safe, you feel being in the same kind of group of people. You don't feel differentiate from the people. It's kind of that kind of idea that kind of dragging you and bringing you all together. I think that's happening in the countries. And I think when you think of the word cosmopolitans, it's very difficult for me if to think of the word if you think of this word in my countries, you know. So yeah.
Well, thank you. Because now the fact that, now of course I mentioned something from Indonesian sort of like history, and it's also interesting that not many people, of course, even in my own country now, reading all those essays or books written by the founding fathers of Indonesia, you know, published in the 30s, in the 40s. But a lot of them actually embrace this idea of nationalism, which is probably explain the case why this spirit of cosmopolitanism somehow appear even in the preamble, in the introduction of Indonesian constitutions. But at the same time now, even though we are so much built, you know, as a nation, a state, with this idea that embrace cosmopolitanism, nowadays actually we are somehow involved, or we are somehow evolve almost together, you know, with some other countries' experience, in which our chauvinistic nationalism somehow started to appear or manifest more and more presence, you know, in currently, you know, either in the form of right-wing nationalists or in the form of Indonesian Islamic right-wing groups and so on and so forth, which is really troublesome, because we know that in the early stage of the formations of Indonesia as a nation state, it seems like this is already so obsolete, for them, for those founding fathers, because they coin out all these ideas that really embrace the idea of cosmopolitanism. And now, almost 70 years later, we are actually regressively embracing something completely different. Gia, probably you can add something more into this, please. Please unmute your microphone first. Thank you.
Yeah, I really enjoy your presentation and reading. It was really nice. And, for everyone, I mean, you have totally different takes, but it's very kind of complementary each other's. So I would like to congratulate Miss Grace for all your selections and invitations and all the speakers. But Enin, I really, I think your questions for Mary, about the cosmopolitans in Thai context, I wanted to trace back to the pre-modern history. If you think of Ayutthaya period, which is from 14th to the 18th century, I think Siam or Ayutthaya since then, it was maybe one of a few kingdoms in Asia that we did not kill white people.
We love them.
It's not about love or hate, Mary. I think it's more about money. It's really about economy, because
Okay.
if you go back to the history of China, Japan, Korea, right? They all closed country during those period. And I think Ayutthaya is, in terms of the geography, Ayutthaya is more or less like a kind of in the middle of the Southeast Asia, from between South Asia to East Asia. So a lot of ships, they stop in Patani, in Lankasuka, and then they went to Ayutthaya, to trade. So that's how the king of Ayutthaya kind of used our geography, as a kind of like the cities that has for cosmopolitan trading, and it's also interesting that they're trying to balance the internal kind of conflict. That's why they have to hire many troops, of the foreign soldiers, like from Persia, from Japan, from Portuguese, from everywhere, just to kind of, balance the power, between within the court. So that was one reason, of how it makes, it's shaped Thailand up until now, that we are so open, for tourists, for foreigners, because I think we are one of a few countries in Asia that we did not kill them. We started to kick them out, after the end of Ayutthaya period, right? And then we reopened the countries again around Rama III, Rama IV, and then it's kind of more open up again during this crypto colonization period by Rama V, right? So during those time, like the fact that Mary said that, actually it is not that when the formation of the states has been kind of reenacted in the 20th century, by the People's Party, right after the change of the monarchy to absolute monarchy to constitutional monarchy. I think because of the natures of Thailand, that it has been so diverse, as in almost as diverse as other cities in Southeast Asia, like in Burma, right, and Indonesia, Malaysia. And because of that nature, so the ideas of nationalism, and that's why the government then, they kind of start the policies of assimilation. It's not like either you're Chinese, or Malay people, they wanted to be Thai. Actually, they were forced to be Thai. It's not like they love Thailand and they want to be Thai. It's not true, Mary. It's totally a blood, sweat, and tears process, of being like, almost like the assimilation process. It's not smooth. It's not as smooth as everyone sees. Yeah. But so the way that you say, the formation of the nation state in Southeast Asia, do we have a spirit of cosmopolitanism? I think it's a dilemma, for us, that we wanted to become a new nation with the independence, from the colonial power. Thus, we use nationalism, as a tool, right? And in the same time, we wanted to be part of the world. But how can we both, like, being ourselves as a Thai, as an Indonesian, as Myanmar, and how can be the same or equal, as in our, as our partners in the world, from the both South and West and East and North hemisphere. So this is a question. Yeah, I think it's still a work in progress, right?
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Jeff. All right, Nisa, you are actually expressing a new kind of cosmopolitanism, with the fandom. Not even knowing your favorite group's real life, it's just it's mediated, right? The news you got them from the media, from the information channels, but somehow this fandom generates a new kind of alliance, of a new kind of cosmopolitan alliance. I would like you to explain more whether you have a similar kind of experience aside from this K-pop as an example, which is very interesting anyway, but probably in different kind of networking or a new kind of alliance that you are somehow involved in. Please.
Yeah, actually, I might say that I'm not really involved in other alliances, but then I do have alliances with my friends. Like, my friends is my alliance. So, and also at the moment, or in the recent years, we experience almost the same working conditions that really triggered us to think more. Isn't it this the time that we need to really, like, realizing, making a union between each other? I'm speaking in the context of Jogja, for example, like few of my friends have this idea of really realizing this union of art workers in Jogja, especially because we somehow like talk with each other who's interested on making this and how can we start this union and how it will work. And I think for me personally that I'm going to speak based on my age. Like I'm now 29, and my experience working in the art world, I'm always working as assistants, social media admin, and working as assistant somehow. Sometimes you work in an institution that really really nice, gives you contracts, like give you very detailed working condition, what you got, what will you do, but somehow they're not. And this experience actually also happened in other friends. Like currently they just graduated, they just started working in the art world, and then they feel like afraid if they said that, can I say that I'm overworked? Can I say that I'm tired? It's somehow like really really saddened me in a way that we're friends, but we don't really know what our friends experience. And I think like few days ago, I met my friend and we talked about it, about how to start this union and what it will be function as. And I think one of the things that it will function as, it will provide you support and also helps, like these very basic questions that we think that you should know, but they don't know. Like we need to like open these problems to everyone. We need to open these problems, but also to support and help them. Like I can help my friend because I know them, but I don't really know if other people experience the same working conditions. So I think to not start it bigger, to start with circle of friends that we believe that we have the same purpose, we have the same spirit. I think it's what we imagine we can start with.
But are you in a way probably in conversations with some of your friends in other countries, for instance, who somehow experience the same kind of things? That this kind of conversation or dialogue about working condition in the art will probably, even though you started in Jogja, but it's somehow the networking actually larger, can be much larger than Jogja alone. Okay, so do you have any platform in which you probably communicate about all these issues for now, or not yet?
Yeah, not yet. I might say not yet, but I've talked to a few of my friends, like for example, like in Malaysia, I also talk with her about the working condition, and also to think about this working condition not only as a myth to normalization, and also as a gossips that circulates between friends, but to really think that this is something that we should do something about. Like, but to say that if we already have the platform, no, I think at the moment we're really busy with our own office work, and also some friends really tired with this COVID situation, especially in Indonesia. It's out of control. I mean, there's no control. And then we need to take a moment to think, but also this conversation is not stopped because sometimes we talk to each other. So I hope really soon that we can really do this.
So now probably other participants would like to comment or asking questions or develop or even make new suggestions whether we can further expand our conversation. Nathalie, would you like to?
Yeah, I just relating so much to everything that's being said, and I think speaking to Nisa first, anyone who works in the art world has experienced this desire to unionize for rights and better pay and less working hours, and this feeling that you constantly do so much for little recognition, or you do it always for someone else, not for yourself, being the artist mainly. And I'm also just a personal reflection of having just come back to the US last month, and where unions are basically illegal, and hearing about Amazon, which is about to move into my hometown of Alexandria, Virginia, and Amazon workers have proposed that Jeff Bezos should go to space and stay there, and they've all signed a petition. I think 60,000 Amazon workers have signed this, and they also tried to form a union and were basically sued out of the power and the money and the legal structure behind Amazon was basically able to say, you can't afford a union against us. And I fear that part of the art world is the same. It's such a, and I'm in New York right now. I went to a gallery yesterday. It's a 6-floor story high, amazing space, which, you know, young people our age are serving drinks and our gallerinas working for a very little per hour, but they love the art. They want to be a part of something. And I think that also relates back to cosmopolitanism, where you want to be a part of a community, you want to build something. You also want to be able to critique it and shape it. And then just to relate it also to Myanmar, where we were experiencing so many incredible protests in February, which all broke down in March because of the question of who is cosmopolitan in Yangon, who gets to protest. There was such energy and unity in the beginning. And then all of these conversations started to ask, well, the people from the countryside who are day laborers, they get paid per day for things like building roads. They were told not to come into the city anymore. They're too loud. It's not exactly the protest that we want. And then the protest lessened, and there was this kind of class struggle within the union, the unity. So I think we need to watch out for that as well. That kind of the remembering that we should all be together, and then very easily forgetting about places. And time out of joint, I spoke to Grace about this too. The Palestinians, this kind of cyclical issue has been going on for so long, and we forget, and then it comes in the news again. But meanwhile, the Palestinians deal with it all the time for generations. And where do we all fit in that? So that's all I was, just all of this running through my mind while we're speaking and reading, just incredible intersections all over the world in all these different time zones, and even for all of our individual work choices and things like that. So I'm sure Grace also has some some comments as well. I'll ask her to say a few words.
It's just for me, it's really interesting to whether we have further take out on this example that Nisa already showed us previously, you know, on the way this fandom actually took over or transformed the power structure, you know, the power play, you know, by boycotting the concerts, the ticket sales, etc., etc. Of course, we have many different forms, you know, in which this sort of like solidarity, you know, organically happen in many instances, not institutionalized, you know. For instance, when Indonesia, the north of Sumatra, you know, hit by tsunami, 2005. Actually, the people, because of the possibility of communication through internet and this information technology, they got, especially school children, actually got support from many other children from all over the world who sent them books and other stuff, you know, in which this sense of solidarity, this sense of empathy embodied in that gestures. But at the same time, we see, let's say we witness this cosmopolitanism in action, you know, even though it's not institutionalized per se, but it's there. The potentials of building this vast network of people who can empathize and understand each other, you know, and help each other is still there. Or am I too optimistic or what?
It's interesting that you say optimism, because I think there is this desire to create that optimistic arc. We're even dealing with that now with exhibitions of Myanmar artists who curators are saying that their work is too dark and they need to see hope. Otherwise, they won't be able to survive this period. These are curators outside of Myanmar. And this battle in their own heads of, how can I be optimistic when this has happened all before? And they're right to be cynical as well about something like cosmopolitanism too. It also changes, once you change your attitude towards it, it changes the face of being in solidarity, which might be a good thing too. We might need that as well.
Any more comments? Probably, Grace.
There seems to be no comments or something from other channels, but there are conversations in our chat. There are conversations in our chat. I don't know if Katarina wants to show up and talk about it. Maybe we have one more
Katarina
round.
is here.
One more round.
And then we will conclude this session. Yes.
I know, Ruth and me, we were just discussing the difference between unconsciousness and sleepiness, and then Ruth mentioned the beautiful work by Khairunnisa on somnambulism. And I didn't want to come up with this because we were on a different level of the discussion now, because I was just thinking about the state museums in Berlin, which is a quite, I don't know, it's a sad story of sleepiness, I would say. Because I'm so much intrigued by this idea how the different facets of sleep could be. So, and it's, let's say, an unhealthy way of sleeping, which is going on. In the Berlin State Museums, I mean, we always say we don't have enough money, but there is money compared to other institutions, and there are so many things people can do. So I'm always very sad to, what Ruth just said is a kind of somnambulism, which is going into a nightmare dream, let's say. It's this way. So, but because we haven't touched now the aspects of museology and institutions and roles of institutions and the difference of state museums and private museums, and also the museum as, let's say, the start of imbalance, and in a way of differences, but and which now turns to be the biggest sleep in the world. A way of how can we use, as workers in a museum, sleep as a subversive act to change this museum. This would be something I would be interested in. Just a question, sorry.
Thank you, Katarina. Any more? Maybe June is still around. June, no? Stefan, probably you would like to add up something?
Well, I have to start my video. First of all, thank you to all of you. That was very impressive, and I was just thinking, I mean, coming back to Enin, what you said about the sort of this optimistic take on the connection of cosmopolitanism and solidarity to link up two things, right? And working in an institution, to take up Katharina, yes, I guess I definitely would agree that we sort of have to keep with the optimism, and we have to see the potentials. At the same time, today, we witnessed that the Goethe-Institut in Belarus, which was just connected in certain ways to Myanmar, because our colleagues were discussing ways to work with artists who are in protest situations and in situations of resistance. And we just learned today that the Goethe-Institut has been closed in Minsk by the local authorities, yeah? Which could be a take where you say, I don't know how optimistic we can be. The second thing I'm extemporating at the moment is to also connect this notion of cosmopolitanism and solidarity to the experiences of the last 1.5 years, where I think we all experience on the one hand a phenomenon which is taking place worldwide, which knows no borders. And at the same time, we see a very strong reflex of the nation state in dealing with that. And the question is what to make out of that, and what will stay from this experience. Yeah, and so it's kind of more open questions which have been triggered by the conversation and the readings you initiated. Yeah, so maybe that's it at the moment.
Thank you, Srivan.
June,
would you like to add up something before we finish our session?
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. That was a lovely session. I really enjoyed all the chapters that were picked. I think it was very meaningful, actually, going through a lot of different perspectives of the subject itself. And perhaps just touching on 2 points. One to do with what Nisa was talking about, solidarity and finding some kind of connection, and connections which may not be felt, right? So a connection that's attempted.
some windy something from your side, June. That sort of like hides your voice. Sorry.
Oh, okay. All right. This should be better, right? Okay. All right. So I was just gonna say thank you very much. It was I really loved all the segments that were selected to read, and so I wanted to touch on 2 points. One being what Nisa had talked about, solidarity, and even these kinds of connections which may not be made, which could be felt or not necessarily really acknowledged, and that immediately brings to mind actually what we're doing in Singapore. So the title of the exhibition is The Gift, and it really looks at the complexities of exchange. The fact that something that is given, something that's offered, may not necessarily be recognized as what it is, may not necessarily be reciprocated as it is, and what that means. And I think this is something that history is peppered with such occasions, and to have these in view, not just simply the ones that succeed and therefore make it into the historical narrative itself, right? What we do is all the other things. And I think that's kind of interesting for us to think about. And I really also liked what Ruth was talking about sleep. And, sleep is something so ordinary. And I think that connects with what Grace was also talking about right from the start, talking about Trinity's work, the act of eating, something very ordinary. And I feel that that's something we are trying to reach in this project too, because we're very cognizant of what collections do. We're very cognizant of what organizations do, and we're trying to find, okay, where are these other gaps? What else is happening? What are we not capturing? What are the things that we really need to turn our attention to? So I think, through this talk, I think you've really sharpened some of the aspects that we're trying to, draw out in the project. And so, yeah, I'm very appreciative of that.
Thank you, June.
Can I say something? Oh, Ruth.
Oh, yeah, I would like to hand over to Grace. I think we are.
But Ruth wants to say.
Ruth, yes, please.
Just really, this is like a perspective from someone who does not live in Southeast Asia. So it's an outsider perspective. But I have to say, I feel that the people I know who are active in the art scene in Southeast Asian countries have it so much better together than in a lot of other places, and exactly in their ability to focus on something that's really relevant to the local situation. So honest about the local situation without losing sight of the international. So if there was a more contemporary idea of cosmopolitanism, that's maybe not about the city as such or the modernity, but as a kind of new way of living this, I am actually learning so much from you guys all the time. So this, not to be close-minded on the local, but to say, this is the emphasis, this is my life's blood, this is where it needs to happen. But I'm not going to make that I will still be, looking at others, making these connections to others, helping others, inviting others. And so maybe I'm idealizing, but I'm just comparing it to other countries. I don't even get me started on the United States. Let's just say Germany. There, you might not be aware of the fact how good you're doing this, how successful you're doing this. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Okay, I'll hand over to Grace, please.
Thank you so much, Mas Enin, and everyone, actually. I'm bad at closing. I don't think I can do closing, but I have one comment to make. I carefully avoid the word solidarity, and I seriously carefully avoid to use that word. And I realized that actually no one was saying it until we started talking. Nisa was speaking about unions, probably in an idealistic sense, because I think it's a question that quite a lot of us have been asking, Nis, and in very different ways, and maybe in smaller groups, but the smaller groups somehow don't meet. So yeah, and different. Yeah, I don't know. Mary's Mary sort of confronted it, but speaks about it from a very isolated example with artist work, so that you can be very focused, but also shows the breadth of like Prachaya being one person speaking to other person and being empathetic to that relationship, and how it also translated to mediums that he's using. Yeah, I'm just surprised that it comes right back at us, even if it's being avoided. Thank you so much for reading together and talking about whatever we read, and this shall not be the last time we are together in the same situation. Hopefully next time we can really cheers And I guess see you all next month. Oh no, end of July for GIAP's public program with Zoe Bad.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
Bye.
very much. We'll
Bye.
see each other again, hopefully
Thank you,
soon.
Rangi and Nina also.
Yes.
Thank you.
And Maya.
Rangi, Nina, and Maya.
And Maya.
Maya. Yeah, Maya.
Yes.
Where's Maya?